And here are your hosts, RJ Young and Brandon Drumm.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am here with Brandon Drumm. Today we are going to talk about that poop show of an Orange Bowl. If you're an OU fan, if you're an Alabama fan, couldn't have gone better, honestly. We're also going to get into the defense coordinator candidates, and I'm going to throw some names. Brandon's going to throw some names. We might come to some sort of agreement. We'll see. We're also going to talk about who is going to start at quarterback for Oklahoma against Houston in 2019. We're also going to get into the return to Hollywood, yes or no, and the transfer market. And I got this thing about Manny Diaz and Dana Holgorsen that I really got to get off my chest. But Brandon, how are you?
Man, I'm tired. We just got back late yesterday from Miami, so it has been a whirlwind. We got absolutely zero sleep, maybe a little bit on the flight. But after the game, it was tough having to get done with the game and do all the media stuff and get all the write-ups up by about 2, 3 a.m. on the board. Man, it was tough go. And then by that time, it was might as well go catch our flight back to Oklahoma City. So it was a tough go, but it was a fun trip. It just sucks that we're not going to San Francisco.
Did you connect through Dallas or connect through Atlanta?
We ended up actually driving down to Dallas and just flying out. So, yeah, we just flew to Miami or Fort Lauderdale from Dallas because it was much, much cheaper.
Dude, I made the flight from Portland to Miami in a day, and that was hellacious. Like, I went TUL to Dallas to Portland to Dallas to Miami. Garbage. Hated that. It's not flying, like the act of flying. It is all of the anxiety involved in flying. You know, from boarding pass to getting your seat to jockeying for position to being cattle on a car to smelly people to flights being delayed. I do not envy you.
No, it was fun. Plus, you know, doing it with my bringing my wife down with me was even more entertaining because having to juggle being husband and worker employee of OUInsider.com was quite the act that I had to put on, and it tired me out even more. So it was entertaining. The media party, I can tell you, was quite fun.
Yeah, the mothership. The motherships.
Oh my!
The motherships have heard a good time. Rivals the Cotton Bowl.
And then we went out to some bars and clubs afterwards, and saw some very entertaining.
Did you go go dancing?
I don't know. It wasn't so much called go dancing, but I got my freak on, man. I got a little crunk there that night. It was fun. Went out and actually we took a couple of college of the kids. They reminded me why I'm 35 years old. I can tell you that. So that was entertaining. I can't hold up with those guys like I used to, but my wife's a little bit better than me at that. I'm just not there yet, and I don't think I'll ever be again. My liver can't handle it. I can say that.
Well, as the resident young dude on this podcast, I'm inclined to mention that you're a year younger than Lincoln Riley, but you're both younger than LeBron James, who turned 34 today, which is just bonkers. Like, every time I think that, you know what, I'm doing pretty good for 31, I remember that my man's literally has done the best job in the NBA since 2003, and he's not 35 yet. It just seems unfair.
Yeah, he's the ageless wonder, it seems like, and some people are just gifted. Adrian Peterson's another guy that just seems like he just continues to.
I feel like Adrian Peterson's been 45 for like 15 years.
Oh my gosh, he's my age, and it's just like, dude, come on. How are you still running for 1,000 yards at 34 years old? Come on, bro. That's just not right.
Well, I mean, you know, so that aside, Lincoln Riley, 36 years old, has made 2 consecutive college football playoffs. Hadn't won one, though, and has the distinction of Oklahoma being the first college football playoff team to lose twice in the college football playoff in the same year, which, you know, you can always say that it's better to make them than not make them. Right. But we expected a better game, and I guess after going down 28-0, you kind of got one. But the fact of the matter is, you went down 28-0,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no lipstick on that pig. There is nothing that you can do to salve that. Alabama was the better team, top to bottom. You got a Kyler Murray game, if not in the completion percentage, but outside of him and CeeDee Lamb, who could you really be excited about?
Rambo.
49-yard touchdown, yeah.
Yeah, well, he caught a big 4th and 5 as well.
That's right. That's right.
And then he caught another one across the middle as well. He played really, really well. You know what? I think if Oklahoma goes with him instead of Hollywood, and this sounds really crazy, right? To even say if they go with him instead of Hollywood, they're probably in a lot better position than they are, earlier on in the game. And they're not down 28-0 because I think drives continue to happen. They were looking for Hollywood, and he couldn't get open. He couldn't.
Oh, stop that! I saw him get open. I saw him drop passes too.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about that deep, the deep ball, the go. Rambo would have ran underneath that. He still had his legs underneath it. And Hollywood was gimping so bad on that play. That was a play that you could actually tell, man, that dude's not even like 70%.
Then don't start him.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. If they don't play him, they're in a better position with Rambo than they are what they had with Hollywood. If they played him the whole game, the Oklahoma offense started moving much better and fluid the second they took Hollywood out. Did nobody else notice that? Like,
of course we all did.
Scoring when they pulled him out and put Rambo in.
By that,
it was like, whoa, there you go.
By that time, it was too late, man.
It was too late. That's why they shouldn't have played him. Okay, so I told you all like weeks ago that he was going to play, and I was told verbatim what the source told me, and I think you know who I'm talking about. Verbatim, the source told me, look, you would have to have his leg cut off for him not to play, his foot cut off for him not to play in front of his family, and that was obviously the case. He was going to go out there regardless of the fact. Now, here's the stuff that I wonder is I don't know if they do what they did back then with I'm sure they don't because everything's documented. But back in our day, they would just give you a pain pill and let you go out there and play because you couldn't feel anything, I don't know that they do that anymore, and I'm pretty positive they don't because you could actively tell he was gimpy. I don't think there's cortisone shots like there used to be or Toradol shots and all that stuff. I don't think they do that anymore because if they did, I think my man would have been running a lot better than he was because it was a muscle issue. And muscle issues can be drowned down with medication. Bones can't, So it's one of those deals where they should have went with Rambo. And the funny thing is that same source told me they need a big game out of Rambo and Hollywood both. They got one of the guys to have a big game. The other one just was so mentally screwed up with that injury that he couldn't even focus on catching an out route. And that was, think about it. Like I saw Hollywood and talked to him like off camera in the locker room after the game, and basically, he just was awfully like uncontrollably sobbing in his locker. Like as we're exiting, like I stopped by and was like, dude, look, you gave it your best. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You did what you thought you needed to do for the team. And he looked up at me and said, I did, but I may not have. I shouldn't have. And I was like, you shouldn't say that. Like, you shouldn't say that. You did, this team isn't in the situation they're in if it's not because of you. So keep your head high. I know you wanted to play well in front of your family and your friends, but it didn't work out that way, dude. You've got a long career ahead of you. And he just said, yeah, man, appreciate you, whatever. And we just kind of did the bro hug and left out. But, like, I don't know Hollywood that well, but I just felt like that was something that needed to be said for somebody that was so emotional in their locker room. And he gave great interviews before that, but you could tell, like, the weight just hit him after everybody was leaving. And so I just felt like I needed to say something to him. So that was rough. That was really rough on him.
Look, man, I get it. Everybody was upset following the game. Nobody wanted to see a loss. Everybody felt for the kids, myself included. And I don't blame Hollywood, and I certainly don't blame Charleston Rambo for having to wait that long to get into the game. But from where I'm sitting, it ain't just Hollywood and it ain't just Rambo.
No,
Michael
you get
Jones could have
Kennedy
done the
Brooks.
job. Jalen Robinson could have done that job. You have wide receivers that you can play in that Z receiver position if you want to. That is a head coach's discretion decision from where I'm sitting. And if the dude doesn't have it to go, you should know that right away. You should know that as soon as you see something that is off in this game, you have to pull him. You have to get him out of there. You have to save him from himself. And you have to give the team the best opportunity to win. This is where I come down on the whole, hey, Trevor Lawrence for Kelly Bryant? Really? Yeah, Dabo said it best. My job is to do what is best for my football team. I cannot think about one player. I have to think about my football team. And in this instance, it feels like they were thinking about, hey, maybe Hollywood at 60% is better than anybody else we have at 100. You're going to tell me that Hollywood better at 60, 70% is better than Rambo, better than Robinson, better than Michael Jones? I don't buy it.
No, I don't either. And it was evident that wasn't the case. But if you saw him in pregame, to a man, every media person, we're all looking at each other, dude, this dude has got it. He's going to do well. And I think he was just fine. And I think he re-injured it at some point during the game. And he continued to, instead of saying something to somebody, I think he tried to just push through. And you're talking about a guy that hadn't done a whole lot until he got down to Miami. You know, we discussed it. He's jogged, he's ran a little bit, but he never ran full speed. Like we talked about it on the board. He got on the bike. He'd been working and doing little bits of things, but he never went full speed. Everything he did was half speed, 3/4 speed. He got out there and finally went full speed continuously. And I think he re-injured it at some point. I don't think we'll ever be told that one way or the other, but because you watch that pregame warm-up, he is flying around.
He's flying around without anybody threatening to hit him, without anybody coming down on him, without anybody challenging him when he gets off the ball, without anybody poking him on the sideline. He's flying around without the fear of getting hurt. So it's just a different tenor on that. But also, look, Kennedy Brooks was doing what he was supposed to do. That dude had a hot hand there, and you went away from him.
Yep.
I get starting with Trey. I get starting with Trey Sermon. I get that. It makes sense to me. But as soon as Kennedy Brooks busts one, you got to feed that man, right? And I'm the last person that wants to call Lincoln Riley's offense because I still believe that's the best play caller in all of college football, if not football proper. But goodness me, man, you know, number one, that you only got two backs that you trust, right? Because TJ Pledger played, but you obviously don't trust him to put it back there at running back in this situation. You knew that CeeDee Lamb was there to play. There was a big fourth down conversion. I think it was 4th and 2, where Kyler and CD had this great play where, I mean,
back shoulder.
Yeah, nobody else would have made that play on the field that day. And they were abusing Patrick Surtain. That was the other thing. That was the weak link that you needed to go after if there's such a thing on the Alabama defense. Go after Patrick Surtain's kid over and over again because CD was eating him alive. And then there's the thing for which a lot of folks would ask this question, and I know why I would do it, but I'm going to put it to you first. If you're Lincoln Riley, and he did this in the Big 12 championship, why do you defer? If you win the coin toss, why don't you take the ball?
Okay, so if you watched our Facebook Live, Joey posed the same question, but he chose exactly what Lincoln Riley chose to do. He said that's what he would do. And literally when they did that during the game or before the game, the kickoff, I looked over at Joey and I said, "You got it right. That's what he did. I still wouldn't do that." And I said the whole time, you take the ball. You do exactly what you did against Georgia last year, and that was you set the tone of the game. You do what you do, and that is you push the issue. You push the envelope. You get them with their backs up against the wall down 7-0 and see how they react because Alabama's not really used to that outside of the Georgia game. And guess what? They weren't coming back if they stuck with Tua Tagovailoa yet during that game. If they didn't go to Jalen Hurts, they're losing that game, and Oklahoma's playing Georgia instead of Alabama, or actually Alabama's probably still in it, but Oklahoma's left out. But still, the point is well, actually, you know what? That's a lot of what ifs. They were down by a lot. I don't know that Alabama actually would have been. But
no, it would have been Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Georgia. That's the way it would have been if Georgia beat Alabama.
But I kind of feel if they would have been down 21 or lost by 21 or something like that, there's no way they could do that. But it is the SEC, so they probably would. But
And it would
anyways,
have been a
so
win over the number one team in the country and the best
right,
team in college football. So you were in a flip
right,
flop of Clemson and Alabama. Georgia did Oklahoma a service, right, in
yeah,
losing that football game.
absolutely. No, but I'm saying like if you would if you lose by 21, do they kick Alabama out? I don't know. I feel like
No,
they would. You
no,
don't think so?
no. They could get blown out. They could have lost by 50 and still made the playoff.
So basically, they're 2003 Oklahoma, is what you're saying. Like
Yeah,
when they played
because
in Kansas State. Yeah.
because there. I mean, Kersey actually had a great story in the Athletic about this and how that's the best team that anybody ever saw. And it, wasn't very good because they had coaching changes going on and whatnot, and they just got rattled. But no, this Alabama team is the best one that Nick Saban has ever fielded. That I don't know why we're even arguing about that at this point when we see what he has offensively. Like Will Muschamp had a great quote saying, "Hey man, I never thought that Nick's defense would take a back seat to his offense, and yet that's what's happened."
Yeah, and you know what the crazy thing is? That ought to tell everybody just how good this Oklahoma football team is because they actually dominated Alabama from the 10-minute period, 10-minute time of the second period on. Like that they literally dominated it from that point on. It was Oklahoma all the way from that point. And that ought to tell you just how good this Oklahoma football team actually is because Saban is losing his mind on the sidelines watching Oklahoma just bite little by little back at him. Just
Nah,
little by little.
I don't see that. I see it as him literally getting pissed that they're penalizing themselves and they should be up by another score, but they keep picking up these penalties that are stupid.
Well, they're picking
and
up the
and
penalties
yet,
because they're not used to
no,
somebody coming
I
back at them.
disagree. Because they saw it against Georgia. Georgia was giving them everything they wanted. They weren't picking up penalties like this. They were getting beat. And Nick Saban throwing his headset down 18 is him being pissed about the discipline of his football team. Not
Well,
that
yeah,
Oklahoma's
pissed,
coming
but
back.
I think that goes to Oklahoma and what they're doing as well. You can't take away from Oklahoma coming back because I literally if they stopped them there was a 3rd and 3 and they had I can't remember I think it was Najee Harris actually that came around the end and they had him in the backfield and literally Kenneth Mann has him wrapped up 2 yards behind the line and he slides out of Kenneth Mann's arms, turns up the field and barely gets the first down. That right there, Oklahoma was about to stop them once again because they were only on their Alabama was on their own like 28-yard line at that time.
I feel like the argument that you're making is that everybody should think better of this Oklahoma team because they could score points on Alabama, when really what you're telling Oklahoma fans, I think the way they're going to read this and hear it is, you should be even more pissed that this team went down 28-0.
Yeah, pretty much is what I'm saying. You should be really pissed off. They should have never been down 28-0.
And
Really,
for them to be down 28-0, and then that's when Drew Samia loses his mind. That's when Bobby Evans loses his mind.
Yeah,
that's when they decide that they're pissed and want to have some pride, is that they're embarrassed and they want to get upset about it. No, that is not Oklahoma football. That's not the way that you play the game. If it takes you being down 28-0 in a college football playoff for you to get mad, I don't know that I want you on the field that day. Because
then you word it better than I do. I'm trying to long explain it without throwing names out. So yeah, you go for that. I was just saying you're wording it much better than I was.
No, I think we're agreeing. I think we're agreeing,
Yeah.
but I also am. I'm me, which is to say I'm gonna say what I think and what I feel, and if names are involved, names are involved.
Yeah, absolutely. My point is, I guess you made it, but just to clarify, Oklahoma had so many chances to actually pull within 4 points, and that's what I wanted to see, and I think everybody wanted to see if you're an Oklahoma fan is, and I don't think Alabama really wanted. They wouldn't want to see that, but how are they going to react? How is this Alabama? Because they were already kind of crumbling by shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over and over and over. Oklahoma just didn't capitalize on those opportunities, and it felt like the defense just needed one more stop. If they got that one more stop. And there's this other play where Tua, obviously he was short by at least a yard when he slid on the 3rd down, and Oklahoma was going to get the ball back with 3 minutes left. and probably could have put it within 4 points. So that's what I'm saying, because Alabama wasn't going to stop Oklahoma. We saw that. They weren't stopping Oklahoma from the second quarter on. They were not going to stop OU. And the sad part about it is that it took Oklahoma a whole quarter to adjust to what Alabama was when it comes to their physicality. And that right there is the epitome of playing in the Big 12. They're not used to that.
Hey,
And
well, and I make
that is an issue.
I
That
make
is
this
an
point.
issue.
I make this point that one of the reasons that the SEC is so lauded is the physicality of the defenses and the offenses, but also if you're Oklahoma and you carry this conference, quite literally, you put it on your back every year for the past 4 years at a minimum, and you have to leave this conference and play against SEC teams or Big Ten teams and show everybody that you are physical and that you can do more than finesse, that you can do more than be smooth and quick, that these are the games for which you have to show it. And iron has not sharpened iron. The Big 12 as a whole is weak when we're talking about physicality and strength and being able to impose your will because they don't have to.
Texas is it.
Yeah, Texas's defense runs the three-man front, and they run a dime scheme.
Well, so does Alabama. Alabama's a 3-man front.
No, they run a 3-4. They run a 3-4.
Right.
Texas
It's
comes
a
out here with
it's a
5
50
defensive
front, but
backs.
It's like it's literally 3 down linemen. Is
It-
what I'm saying.
But it's also a 50 front, which means that you can bring
that's what I'm saying.
5 onto the line
Yeah,
of
you can
scrimmage.
Bring up 5. Yeah.
And their spur, their nickel safety is a linebacker that actually has safety speed. Like, that's the big
Yeah.
difference between Oklahoma's
Yeah.
defense and Alabama's defense and anybody else's defense. The guy who is Buki at Oklahoma has been D. Milner in the past, has been Deontay Thompson this year, has been the dude for which he's Minka Fitzpatrick, who won the Jim Thorpe Award. I'm saying that that's the difference. When we're talking about talent,
Yeah.
when we're talking about, hey, we're getting better talent-wise, when Lincoln Riley wants to throw that out there defensively, he's talking about getting bigger guys like Jeremiah Cradell, who's a college-ready body today, but you need that guy to
I'm
be
writing about that right now, actually. I actually have that in my word.
right.
I started on it last night and got about 300 words in at like 3 in the morning, decided I wanted to go to bed. But yeah, exactly what I'm writing about.
And you
is
need
the bigger, longer guys.
You need to
Yep.
blow up Ty DeArmond. You need to blow up Jamal Morris. You need to blow up Buki. Now, we can talk about height all we want, but the fact of the matter is, if they can push you off the ball and they can muscle you out of the play, like I watched Jerry Judy's son, straight son him, say, call me daddy, to Robert Barnes and Parnell Motley, to Trey Norwood. I saw him do it on the same play. You know, and this
Yeah,
RPO read option slant that I made a
Barnes actually
video
got
about,
Barnes.
they just kept destroyed with. There was no adjustment whatsoever. Eating them alive. Because not just you didn't diagram for that play, but because you're just not big enough. And is
Yeah.
that recruiting? Is that scheme? It's both.
Yeah, it's both. And here's the other issue I have. And one, Barnes should never be out physical because he's a big physical specimen. I think that goes to the back to the playing in the Big 12. You're not used to it, and until you get used to it and adjust to it, it's gonna take. And it should. And unfortunately, when you play teams like Alabama, it takes you a quarter to get used to and adjust because Oklahoma is a physical team. Like their offensive line is known for being just straight maulers and physical. Nobody can.
And
deny
they
that.
got bullied. They got bullied. They got whooped by Isaiah Buggs and Quinnen Williams over and over again. I love the dudes. They're just the best offensive line in the country, and yet they could do nothing with Quinnen Williams. Isaiah Buggs was in the backfield. You know, I mean, I've never seen Kyler Murray have to run for his life like he was having to run for his life. We're talking about coming out to start the third quarter, and my man looked like he had run down 3 fly balls and laid out, had run into the wall twice and climbed it once to no avail, like he'd been playing center field because they're on him. So we can talk about they're known for being maulers, but that was a game for which they were not.
No, they weren't. I mean, they had their moments, but for the most part, yeah, they got whooped quite a bit. But and that's not we're not, and you and I aren't throwing shade at
No,
the
we're
offensive line,
calling
you know.
we're calling the game, right?
Yeah,
we're talking about
just
the
saying
game.
we're people need to realize we're just saying what we saw right there, and that was the offensive line. Okay, and RJ and aren't saying that they didn't play well because guess what? They played okay. They just didn't play like what we're used to seeing them do. And we're used to seeing them take it to the defensive line and not have the defensive line have any moments at all. So anytime you see a Quentin Williams push through or an Isaiah Buggs get through, that's shocking because of who this offensive line is. So people need to take this into context and realize what we're saying. This is the best offensive line in the country. It's not even close. But that defensive line of Alabama is so good that they were throwing punches back. And it took Oklahoma a whole quarter to get off the ropes and push back. And that's where that's the issue we're having. You shouldn't have to take that long to get back into this. And that Orange Bowl was two games, encompassed in 2 games. There was 1 quarter, and then there was the rest of the game. And that 1 quarter, Alabama was so freaking dominant that it screwed the whole game up. It didn't matter what Oklahoma did, and by God, they came back and they fought hard.
Well, and that's also why I'm getting back is, you can look at it glass half full, glass half empty. The glass has still got half the amount of water of a full glass. Point is,
right.
You can look at it and say, hey, man, they played well after going down 28-0, and you're going, where was this in the first quarter? It depends on what you're saying. And if you're Lincoln Riley and you're saying, hey, we've been razor focused and laser focused on the Orange Bowl, I don't really give two, poops in the toilet bowl about who my next
coordinator now.
Right.
Yeah.
So like let's just kind of go into that a bit rather than continue to bag on this subject, for which I know a lot of people are already upset about. The defensive coordinators. When you're talking about, the Pete Golding thing that we were talking about all week, that a lot of folks were talking about. Look,
apparently he's not out of it.
Well, it's not just that he's not out of it. It's that you saw what he's capable of doing, because you and I know from our reporting that he's responsible for a lot of the scheme of what Alabama does. So him being able to show you what he can do against the Heisman Trophy winner and the most efficient offense in college football history basically raised the number for his check, because he shuts you down for all intents and purposes. Now, I know that the yardage was the yardage, and I know that the points were the points, but for the most part, he made Kyler Murray do exactly what he said he was going to make Kyler Murray do, which is eat the ball and do it by himself and turn him into a glorified Randall Cunningham, which is not how you win football games, right? If Kyler Murray's having to do everything, he ain't going to beat. OU's not going to beat you, because you got nothing out of Hollywood. You got a great game out of CD. You didn't get anything out of the run game. It was all of that. But to that point, we talked about Pete Golding. We know that guy is still in the running. We talked about Alex Grinch. We know that guy is still in the running. I want to throw some names at you.
Okay.
And I'm going to throw out Brian Brown, who was at Appalachian State, who took the job at Louisville, for folks who haven't kept up. So y'all can stop throwing that out, because that dude is not going to Manny Diaz. He's going to work at Louisville.
Yeah.
I got a thing about that. So.
Oh, yeah, what Manny Diaz did.
So, you know what? Let me just do it then, right? And then you assess me.
Yep, go for it. I'm probably on your side, so I'm just going to sit back and let you go.
We talk about kids transferring all the time. Kids do it. That's what they do, especially if they're in a bad situation. So earlier in the week, Doug Gottlieb, of all people, has to say that, I think if you transfer during the mid-years, you should have to pay back your scholarship, when in some cases worth $100,000. To which I thought was ludicrous for a number of reasons, not the least of which is Doug Gottlieb was removed from the Notre Dame basketball team, but the dude went to Notre Dame thinking that he was going to be a point guard in a different sort of system. It didn't work for him. And what happened to him happens to kids all the time. He's depressed, clinically depressed. He does not feel well. He does not have his family. He does not really feel like the person that was supposed to oversee him is really getting to him and understanding him. And what do you do when you're depressed as a person who is clinically depressed and manically depressed and deals with this on a day-to-day basis? You want to do things that make you feel better. So I make videos. I make a ton of them. I talk about football because it makes me feel better. I'm one of the few people in life that gets to do what I love for a living, and I cherish it every day. But Doug Gottlieb, he channeled that in a different way. He picked up a credit card that wasn't his to buy some shoes because he thought the shoes would make him feel better, knowing he had a bunch in his closet already. And he got caught, and he paid the price for that. So knowing that you can feel that way and knowing that many kids all across the country playing football feel that way, why would we not want them to transfer? Why would we want them to stick out someplace where they're going to be clinically depressed and not do their best for the team because they don't feel good, so they leave? And yet, Manny Diaz takes the job at Temple on December 13th, which is 6 days before early signing day. And then 17 days later, his crystal ball goes from 100% Temple to flip commit to Miami, where he takes a job for which Mark Richt signed a class on December 19th and then retires, and then left him with Manny Diaz, who leaves Temple in the lurch. And yeah, somebody's going to pay his $4 million buyout because he changed his mind. And yet we want to crucify kids who do the same thing, and yet the kids make no money. The kids don't get much of anything out of it except a lottery ticket that might get them into the NFL. And all while coaches move about with freedom. Dana Holgorsen is another dude who's interviewing for a job at Houston after he signed an early signing class on December 19th and said on the podium at Big 12 Media Day, I don't want a kid to transfer to me because he's not playing. Oh, really? And yet you're going to take this job and leave your kids in the lurch? Nah, man, call it both ways. Do what you want, right? But don't you dare crucify these kids for transferring or redshirting and saying, you know what, this isn't a good situation for me. I'm going to go where I can play. I'm going to go where my lottery ticket might mean a little bit, like Kelly Bryant. Assess, Brandon.
No, I'm with you 100%. I'm okay with the kids transferring. I'm okay with them doing what they need to do to better their lives and better their situations, because guess what? It's their life. It's their situation. It's not something that I feel needs to be policed the way it is sometimes. Now, I get sitting out a year. I get doing all that. I understand all that. There's got to be rules and regulations to it. But
no, do they? No, seriously, I really don't think that rule is doing what people think it should be doing anymore, because coaches don't sit out a year.
Right, but at the same time, then it'll turn into just straight up free agency, at the amateur level.
Well, which is kind of what college football coaching is.
Right, but I don't know, man. That's such a.
I know you are the beat writer, right? I get that, right? And you go about it a little differently than I do, but
yeah,
I guess what I'm getting.
I can't really get on board about, okay, so I'm down with the waivers. So I think
hardship waiver, yeah.
Yeah, I think all of that needs to be done.
Hardship waivers are for things like death in a family, and unforeseen circumstances that the NCAA is sympathetic to, for those that don't know.
Yeah, and there's other waivers as well,
right?
They could throw out, but I'm down for all of that. And if the NCAA is willing to listen to all those and make that to where you have to go through paperwork to get that, and they okay it, by all means, man, be eligible the next year. I just don't want it to turn into, well, I'm not happy here, so I'm leaving. And then the kid's bouncing around to 3 or 4 different schools before he graduates. There has to be some rules. There has to be some regulations to it. That's just how I feel. I don't know why I feel that way. I think it's because that's the way it's been. I do like the change that is happening, where they're being more lenient towards the transfers. I love the portal idea because it's an actual free agent waiver type deal, but at the same time, there's still rules and regulations to it. And I like that aspect of it. But again, like I'm saying, I want the kids to be eligible. I want them to fill out a waiver. And if it's legitimate that they're transferring, I don't want them to transfer and them transferring because they're mad about their playing time.
Counterpoint.
Yeah, go for it.
So, number one, we kind of have that in place because how many kids are really going to transfer during the mid-year? It's not like you can get traded. But I'm also saying if a kid transfer, let's make it stupid. Let's say he transfers 7 times to 7 different schools. He knows what he's doing. He knows that folks are really going to label him as the kind of kid that they might not be able to necessarily trust. And still, if he can play football, he's going to get chances. We know this because football, as much as I hate it, has proven that it will give opportunities to folks with low character because they can play. Take the NFL, for instance, right? So I get where you're coming from about you like the rules and you like there being boundaries set, but people aren't stupid, neither are coaches. they're not going to extend an offer or a scholarship to a transfer kid that they don't trust or don't want to go to bat for. So it's not as if you're not doing this without risk. And we're not talking about the kids that are doing it without risk. We're talking about kids that know that they are a commodity, that know that they're going to get opportunities. And if they don't, they don't. You know, I'm not saying that everybody deserves an opportunity to play scholarship football. I'm saying that if you want to transfer, the NCAA and you and I and coaches, as far as the rules, should not be getting in your way. What it should come down to is, hey, do you at, let's call it BFE State, want me? And they say, yeah.
Should we tell everybody what the acronym for that is?
Probably not, because this is a family podcast. Not like others. BFE State, right, wants you. And you say, you know what, I would like that. And, you know, the way that universities work, I have to finish out my semester anyway. So I'll go there when I finish out my semester here. You can't pull my scholarship mid-semester anyway. And you want to be able to give it to somebody that wants to play here anyway. Why is the NCAA even acting as a third party here? I've asked that for years. But this is also me, you know, having been around it for so long, like you, and also having my own thoughts and feelings about what other people have to say about what I do. And particularly when this gets a bit political, do I want Big Brother telling me what I'm going to do? No. I know who I am. You know who I am. Why does the government need to be involved? And that's what the NCAA is doing. It is the governing body of college athletics, and it works for itself.
Yeah, they work for their own pockets. Absolutely. And I agree with that 100%. That I'm always, it's like the NCAA with me is either they're going to hit it out of the ballpark or they're going to swing and strike out almost every time they make a decision. And I'm usually on the side of them striking out and making awful decisions. But sometimes I do agree with them and how they handle some situations. I love it when they allow a kid to do the things that actually need to be done to make his life better, as far as maybe transferring, maybe allowing them to take something as far as like allowing them to stay amateur. And like with Kyler Murray, like allowing, back in the day, that would have never happened. Like, okay, you sign with an agent, you can no longer play college football. That couldn't happen back then.
It's still a thing, because the rule is you can be professional in the sport in which you are not
right, but I mean they
on scholarship for
that back then.
Yeah,
then that was agent. The word agent. The second you got an agent, you were no longer an amateur according to the rules back in the 90s.
Well, I mean, it used to be
up until probably about 5 or 6 years ago.
You could take that all the way to the IOC, though, because the Olympic Committee had said for years that ours had said you have to be an amateur to compete in the Olympics, and that was stupid for a number of reasons, right?
Yeah, well, because every other country had professional people,
right?
For them,
and who was lining their pockets? The AAU.
Yep.
So, I mean, we could stay on this for forever, honestly. But I want to move it along, move it back to
move on from
move it to.
This is going to go down a slippery slope.
But stay in the transfer market. Have you heard any rumors or any talk? Because I'm listening, and there's nothing really that I can put down on paper that I'm like, yeah, that's definitely happening. For transfers in the defensive category, right? Dudes like. Who was the dude that committed last year from Notre Dame, ended up going to Georgia, flipping his commitment? Jay something, defensive end. It's going to plague me. And I'm sure somebody's listening to the podcast is like yelling in it right now. It was so-and-so. But
are you talking about the transfer that's at Georgia now?
Yeah. He was coming here from Notre Dame to play end.
Yeah, I don't think he'll. So you're.
No, like that guy.
Anybody out there?
Right.
There's numerous reasons why. I'm not going to get into that. So no, I haven't heard any defensive guys just yet. But that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It doesn't mean that Oklahoma's not looking into that aspect. You would think they would, right? I just don't like. So with the NCAA closing the portal off to everybody except for coaches and players, it makes it really hard for us to know exactly who's in it and who's not. So, and I'm sure there's so many guys in there that haven't been leaked out yet. You know what I mean? That their names are on there that we just haven't seen. So it's an issue that I actually contacted the NCAA and asked them. I was like, why can we not look into this? And they're trying to figure out a way to make that happen, to where the media is allowed to look in it, some way somehow legally. But I don't know that that'll ever happen. But it's really hard for us to know all that. But I do know the offensive side of the ball, Oklahoma has some guys out there that I've heard, you know.
Okay. Well, we know
So-
about I think we know about the quarterbacks that
Yeah.
that when we've been talking about it off and on. At wide receiver, at running back, at tight end, we've talked a bit about a guy that Shane Beamer recruited to Georgia, playing over there now, Luke Ford, and
Yeah, that's
perhaps.
exactly who I was about to go with. Yeah.
Oh, go for it.
No, I mean that's Luke Ford is a guy to watch. I mean, he's a big tight end. He's gonna remind everybody of I guess Carson Meyer, except for probably more athletic. And Carson Meyer became a big time player for Oklahoma this year. Like, I mean, he made some big plays for Oklahoma, and he looked good in the Orange Bowl. He's one of the guys that actually played well in the Orange Bowl. So I probably would like to see, Oklahoma go after a guy like that, just because it helps diversify the offense. I like watching offenses that can do everything. Alabama's one of them. Oklahoma's one of them, because they have guys that are big. Like Mark Andrews was so awesome, and that's why everybody needs to just kind of chill on the Calcaterra Mark Andrews kind of comparison, because there is not one. Calcaterra is never going to be 265 pounds and run a 4.640. Like, that's not happening. And I don't know that he never will, but right now he's not going to get there, because his frame isn't allowing, his DNA is not allowing him to do that kind of stuff. So
No, I look at Grant Calcaterra, and his comps are, to me, they're gonna hurt people's feelings when I think about his comps. It's like, nah, that's not who that guy is. It's not who that is, because that's not who I got in mind when I think of Grant Calcaterra. But
Luke
stick.
Ford is a guy you could say.
No, so Luke Ford, I wouldn't even go in the Mark Andrews card, because he's 6'6", 250 already, coming in out of high school. I would say he's actually closer to a Joe John, because
Yeah, that's fair.
he's not very fast. I get the Carson Meyer comparison. I think it's because he's kind of slow,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and he's well, I mean, he's much larger than Carson Meyer, but his hands. That's why he plays tight end. Is he's got hands. Like Isaac Nada is much more like Grant Calcaterra than anybody else playing today. I mean, he's a tall slot receiver, right?
Yeah.
That's basically what he is. I mean, I look at Grant Calcaterra and I see, okay, so this is what Julian Edelman is going to evolve into. I mean,
Right.
that position, because Julian Edelman is still a small dude compared to the rest of the NFL, but I could just as easily see Grant Calcaterra lining up and running those really super short drag routes, slant routes, settle down, cornerback, comeback routes,
Yeah,
and
he's
being
gonna be
very
in the
good.
NFL, absolutely.
Yeah, but
Calcaterra's
playing in that position as opposed to the
Yeah.
traditional tight end position.
Yeah, he's gonna. That's how he's gonna fit into the NFL, is playing that position, because he's not gonna be the fastest guy, but he is gonna be one of the bigger. He's gonna weigh 240, 245, be a 6'3", 6'4" guy going across the middle, and he's more fluid, at
Right,
that size than-
right. And his
and
hands are
like-
better than they have any right to be. Like, that's the thing that I think is still undersold about that kid, is we keep talking about how big he is and how fast we want him to be, and yet if you put it in the vicinity, Grant's going to come down with it. Like, that's the thing
Yeah.
that was just that I didn't expect to see that this year out of him. Like, there was a play that he made in the Orange Bowl that actually got the offense started. He lunged out and grabbed something with two hands he had no business coming down with.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Aaron,
he's great. He's great, but he's not Mark Andrews.
No.
People need to stop doing that. Now, I will say that I feel Oklahoma has that guy on campus, and let's see if you guess who I think that is.
At that tight end position?
Yeah, I think there's a guy on campus that could turn out to be that guy. Be another Mark Andrews type.
I mean, if it's not Braden Willis, I don't know where you're going.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Okay, I was like to say, that's the only guy that fits anywhere around that description.
Yeah, no, so he's already about 230, 235, and he's 6'4". Like,
And he's
he's
super
got-
smart,
Oh, man,
super
he's
smart.
super athletic, super fast. He's everything you want at that position. They're going to just like I think next year if they get the right quarterback, they're going to be able to play Braden Willis and Calcaterra just like they did Andrews and Calcaterra and just mess with people
It
because that is going to jack with people with how good and athletic both those guys are
so
and how big
people
they are. They're mismatches, man.
so
Just
people
straight
continue to
mismatches.
bring up Braden as a Flowers type of Swiss Army knife though, and that seems like that's more of a deal because nobody really trusts Jeremiah Hall right now.
No, I think they do though. They've
Okay.
played Jeremiah Hall versus Alabama, and they've talked about him. I actually had a source tell me that they feel that Jeremiah Hall in the end is going to be more athletic and possibly better than Flowers by the time he's done. Now, I said, bro, you're talking about Dimitri Flowers, right? Like being better. He said, bro, he said when this kid picks everything up, he's going to be so good because he's very smart. He's very athletic. It's just I think the physicality of the game was just a little bit much for him up until this year. And you saw as the year progressed, he started making big plays for Oklahoma. And I think that's going to continue to be the trend. They feel like they can start. They're starting to trust him, and he's going to be a guy next year that is going to be the Dimitri Flowers type guy. But they had a guy that they felt that with Carson Meyer that they felt was really good and good enough that he could play that position for the most part for Oklahoma this year. And with I just went blank now. Who we were just talking about
Well, I
with
mean, just to pick that up, I think what everybody's been trying to get to, and because Dimitri Flowers was so good at this, people forget. Trey Millard is actually the comp that you were thinking about for Jeremiah Hall, or I'm thinking about
yeah
for
yeah
Jeremiah Hall.
Jeremiah Hall is going to be a lot like no. I mean Dimitri. They told me Dimitri Flowers would be Jeremiah Hall is going to be more athletic than Dimitri Flowers, and I just kind of scoffed that off. But this guy knows what he's talking about, so I can't really argue with the person that told me this. But it's just I feel like if you get anywhere in between a Trey Millard and a Dimitri Flowers with Jeremiah Hall, you're going to have an offensive. Uh, you're going to have a guy that you can target and do so many things with. He's going to be a mismatch, just like Braden Willis, just like Calcaterra, but he's going to be doing it in a different way, coming out of the backfield, slipping, just like Dimitri Flowers would do. Would act like he's going to pass block out of the backfield and just kind of slip up the seam and just kind of dump it off. Like they can do so many things with that position, that H back spot, that I think that will be a weapon along with Ford, uh, not Ford, yeah, Ford if he comes in, and along with Willis and Calcaterra. So there's a lot that can be done in this offense, and
Well, I
you
mean,
know Riley's going
we
to be
we
able
know
to do
all
it.
that can be done with the offense, and we're frankly we're spoiled, but we're spoiled to the point where we're just like, you know what, enough with the offense. Tell me about the defense, and but just to try to put this one to bed before we got to wrap up, is Hollywood Brown returning? Because I don't think so, and everything I've heard says
No, I don't
he be
think so.
gone. But the reason I think folks are bringing this up is um, people are following the players on Instagram and Twitter, and they're
Hmm.
reading into what guys say, and I'm going, no. I mean, I get why you want to believe this. It's kind of like with folks like going, Kyler could come back. He still has unfinished business with a national championship. What? No. Get you better secure
Okay,
the
so he
bag,
might. I mean,
son.
not might, but he might want to. He Kyler probably does want to come back because he would love to win a national title. But I mean, these kids are smart. They're not dumb. They're not gonna throw away millions of dollars and a chance to get injured to win a national title. Yeah, that'd be great. But in the long term, for their future and their lives, that's not a smart move. It's not a smart money move. Same goes for Hollywood. Now he may want to come back, and to be honest with you, I think that there is some talk because there is some NFL scouts questioning his durability and being able to hold up at the next level.
Yeah, but he's gonna get those questions regardless because of his
Yeah,
frame.
he is. Yep, absolutely. So why not go ahead and test the waters as it is and see where you land? Because I think the second he goes out there and runs a 4.37, he's going to shoot up the draft board. So I mean, that's all there is to it because they're going to figure out some way to get him. He's not going to be a guy that is going to be you know, he's going to be a Lockett. He's going to be a guy that they use for big play purposes, for punt and kick returns, and that's about it. I mean, that's going to be Hollywood in a nutshell. Now, if you follow Lockett at all at Seahawks, I mean, the guy is having a great career. He's scoring touchdowns. So it's not like he's just going to be out there for a few plays. No, they're going to use him probably 20, 30 plays a game and get him out there and try to he'll be a decoy some, and then other plays he's going to make big plays because you have to account for somebody with his speed, with his athletic ability, and his game-changing ability that he has to be accounted for one way or the other on the field, even in the NFL. If you get a smart offensive coordinator that is able to use that to make their offense better, it's going to work out with Hollywood. But he's a guy that has to go in the right position. I think Cleveland, with as innovative as Freddie Kitchens is, as long as he still stays there, would be a great spot for Hollywood.
Innovative. Innovative. They're running Oklahoma's plays.
They are.
I'm like, yo, I saw that on Saturday. No, I get it, but I'm just, it's like, hey, this is innovative.
For the NFL, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I got you. I'm just.
But it's a copycat league anyway, so you can't really.
Well, it's a copycat sport. Yeah.
The whole thing is just copycat. Everybody's copying what Riley does anyway. So is Alabama. I mean, their whole freaking system is predicated off what Oklahoma has done the past couple of years. I mean, they weren't running. Loxley wasn't running that system until this year.
Well, I mean,
come on.
I think a lot of it also is the way that offense is being called, because you can do two things. You can make your quarterback think, or you can make your quarterback not think. And I've always been on the side of making the players do as little thinking as possible, because you recruited them for their abilities, right? And if they're smart, that makes your job a whole lot easier. But I don't know about you, but I had to learn a playbook, and it ain't the easiest thing to do in the world, especially when you got a lot of moving pieces. So when you can do things like say, you know what, we're just going to run this RPO quick slant, and if you see this guy come down, throw the ball. If you see this guy stays put, run the ball. Like that, just make it simple, as opposed to having to call John Gruden's West Coast offense, right, which is just ridiculous, or what the Packers do with Aaron Rodgers. They're good at it, and they can do it. But if you can make the offense simpler, you're going to do it. And I think that's what you've been seeing more of than anything else. And you've just been dressing it up, which is one of the reasons why I've always loved Gary Patterson's defense, is because his players don't have to think. He does all the thinking, because he's basically accounted for all these different things and all these different looks by giving them one call. But I want to get into that before we have to go. I'm going to throw some defensive coordinator candidates at you. You're going to tell me yes or no.
Okay.
Morgan Scalley, Utah.
Love him. Think he would fit perfectly. The way he like. Okay, so real quick on him. This is just. So I was so irritated, just with. Okay, mind you, yes, I'm a beat writer. Yes, I'm not. I try to not get all, up in arms about how players play and all this, and but this one bothered me. So don't know if it's scheme, I don't know what it is, but so they abused Oklahoma, Alabama did, with the quick slant all freaking game.
I said they would.
Oklahoma
I
gets up
said
there.
they would.
Yeah, and Oklahoma gets up there and pretends like they're going to press, but they don't lay a single hand on an Alabama receiver.
It's a technique that they teach.
Why not? Yeah, that bell. I don't like that bell technique at all. So why not lay at least a hand on them? Why not shade to the inside to at least make them work? Because Oklahoma had blitzes called on several occasions that were perfect.
Do you think that Scalley's going to call more blitzes?
No, but I think he's going to make his. I've watched them, his cornerbacks play, and they lay hands all over everybody. They are physical. That is how he tells them to play. You're going to. He doesn't care about PIs, obviously, because he's all about just being as physically as you possibly can with the receiver, not letting them off the ball. You're going to bully them all game long, and that's how Utah plays. I love it.
Okay.
I think because this is where I'm going with this. So there was two blitzes that I can recall vividly. One with Bolton and one with Patrick Fields, where they ran the RPO and had Motley just touched the receiver. Tagovailoa is getting sacked. He wasn't going to be able to get the ball off. They were in his face. All you had to do was just that split. All you had to do was like a millisecond just nudge him, knock him off to where he's going to have trouble throwing. At the very least, he was going to have to make a tough throw off his back foot that was probably going to be very inaccurate and probably incomplete, or at least intercepted one way or the other. So I don't understand why you don't bump at all. If you're going to line up, do it.
Okay.
And that's what he does.
What about
That's
Tim
what I like.
DeRuyter at Cal?
Love him.
Okay.
I think he's too old, though.
Okay. Bert Watts at Fresno State then?
Love him. I think that he is another guy that is physical. I don't know how old he is though.
Nah, he's a young cat. He's a young
I
cat.
think he's like in the mid-30s, right?
Another young cat, our age, Marcus Freeman, Cincinnati.
His name's popped up a couple of times, and I think he'd be a good candidate. I don't know how
He's my favorite of the guys that we mentioned outside of Golding and Grinch.
Right. Yeah. See, I've heard you say that name. That's kind of where I went researching on him.
He's
I like him. What is it that you like about him the best though? What makes you think Freeman is the guy in your opinion? Like,
well,
not the guy, but like if you had to pick outside of Golding and Grinch, this is why you would pick Freeman.
Because his play background is linebacker at Ohio State. He played, a little bit in the league for the Chicago Bears. Went to Purdue, did some stuff, got to Cincinnati, worked for Luke Fickell, and learned how to call a defense. And when you could turn the Cincinnati Bearcats into one of the best scoring defenses in the country with a team that can't score, like they have the opposite problem of Oklahoma, right, where the defense has to keep them in ball games, and they were undefeated for a very long stretch of this season. I also like how young he is, in that my man is going to, he just turned 32. So he would be younger than Riley. And now you can surround both of those guys with experience in Ruffin McNeil and Shane Beamer. And that was the other guy that I was going to bring up before I get to the last one, was Shane Beamer. Like, I know a lot of folks are like, Bob Diaco. Why not Shane Beamer? He's got everybody's trust. He's shown what he can do in a small dose. We know he can recruit. We know his background. And this dude has worked for more defensive-minded head coaches than I can shake a stick at. He's been to the SEC. He's been to the ACC. He has experience that you want, and he has the aspirations to be a head coach as well. And he's in your program. He's there right now. I think that is the one that nobody wants to bring up that I think makes the most sense to me. And the last guy I was going to bring up was Gary Patterson's defensive coordinator, Chad Glasgow.
Yeah, I don't do anybody out of Gary Patterson's. My deal with that is anybody that gets hired to be a DC after they leave Gary Patterson, they're awful because he's the one that does everything with that defense, and basically those guys are getting jobs off of Gary Patterson's work, in my opinion.
Okay, so what about the Shane Beamer hire?
Okay, so I'm trying to.
By the way, people, these are all hypotheticals before you start running off and telling everybody.
I remember how much he actually has on the defensive side of the ball coaching is what I'm trying to gather.
I mean, okay, so it's not even he's coached the secondary, right?
Yeah, so I know, but he's been underneath Bud Foster. He's been underneath tons of guys that I think that are top-notch defensive minds. Bud Foster, Kirby Smart.
Yeah.
I mean, those two right there. That's about all.
Didn't he coach for Sly Kroom too?
Yeah, he did.
I mean, and that's what this guy has done. He's bounced around, looking to pick up something new from everybody that he's worked under. That's the reason why he came on to Oklahoma, is he felt there was something he could learn from Lincoln Riley about offense.
Right.
But he also has made a concerted effort to stay away from a coordinator position. Because, you're a GA at Tennessee, you're a GA at Georgia Tech, you coach corners at Mississippi State, you coach corners at South Carolina, you coach linebackers at South Carolina, you coach the running backs at Virginia Tech, and tight ends and special teams at Georgia before you get to Oklahoma. I think that's your guy, especially because I understand Bob Diaco can scheme. I know he can scheme. He schemed against Oklahoma. He got to a national championship game. I also know that he had a Heisman candidate at middle linebacker. And I get that he's a great guy. A lot of folks like him. But two things. I haven't heard word one about that guy on the recruiting trail since Oklahoma, right? Which is something that you have to be able to do here. And two, do you trust him in front of a microphone?
Diaco, man, he's fun.
Yeah, well, I mean,
He's fun for us.
right, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
He's fun for us, and I would love it. Like, you and I, obviously. But if you're a fan, there's sometimes where you hear him speak, and you're like, man, come on. You know, maybe word that differently. Or perhaps protect him. You know, like Mike Houck done a great job of what I think of protecting Oklahoma star players in the past, especially when you talk about Mixon and Murray and Baker. And you know what? We're just not going to do that today, right? Or I'm going to stand next to him, or whatever it is that you got to do. If that's your guy, then you'll make it work. I'm just saying that, man, the guy with all the good energy is Shane Beamer on that staff. He's the guy. Like, if you're looking at the staff right now, and you take into account what Lincoln Riley has said about, I'm going to make staff changes after I hire a coordinator, I would only bank on two dudes returning like that I would bet money on. One would be Ruffin, the other would be Shane. Like that's just it. And of the two, nobody wants to see Ruffin call the defense in 2019.
Thibodeau's a guy that everybody says is going to stick around.
Well, okay, so I'm talking about,
But
yeah.
I don't, okay, so if it's Golding, I don't buy that.
Well,
I know.
I'm just giving
I can just say I have a good feeling about who Golding would hire as a defensive line coach. I'll say that.
Well, I'm just talking about as fans, the reaction to what you're going to get, right? That's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about how this works in-house. That's where you're going with it, how this would work in-house. I'm saying if you are following the discussion among your millions of fans, literally millions of OU fans, the guy that everybody would give a high approval rating to is Shane Beamer. That's what I'm saying, right? I get that there are coaches that aren't getting their due, Ruffin being one of them, because he took on a job that probably wasn't going to win at, because nobody's been able to win at it here recently. But he's also been very good for a long time, and Lincoln trusts him, and Lincoln reinforces that I trust him, and this is a guy who got me here. So, you know, everybody's like, okay, cool, we get that. But outside of that, everybody can pick a fight with every other position coach on that defense. They shouldn't. Like guys like Tim Kish, I don't have a problem with him, and I thought his linebackers played well. I mean, Kenneth Murray Jr. had 155 tackles, and he had the gumption to play Curtis Bolton as the starter when everybody thought it was going to be Caleb Kelly. I mean, and you could talk about Kerry Cooks, and you can talk about Thibodeau, and you could talk about Ruff, but man, like I just looked at that staff, and I was like, well, everybody's just going to say, hey, Shane, stay, as opposed to anything else.
Yeah. No, I think Beamer stays 100% on the staff. I think that Ruffin stays. When I say Ruffin stays, I don't know that he stays on staff. Maybe as like an analyst position, possibly. Because I don't know if the new DC is going to be willing to, you know.
Well, he might replace Beamer as your 10th assistant, and you might make Beamer secondary coach or whatever is what I'm saying. You have flexibility. That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
you have flexibility.
Yep.
With that 10th assistant job, you have flexibility.
Yeah, I agree. That Shane Beamer as a secondary coach, I think, is a very interesting idea. Just because it would allow the players to have somebody that they're, they know and that they're okay with and they're used to being around. And he seems to get the best out of people when he does it. The only problem is that's going to put more of a load back on Boulware as far as the running backs and the H-backs, or who's going to take on that load. Or are they going to move Gundy coaching the H-backs again and tight end? Like, it's just a whole, like, they would have to reconfigure the staff on the offensive side again. And I don't know that they want to do that completely.
Which is why Lincoln's like, I'm going to get my defensive coordinator hired before we do anything, because that'll tell you a lot, right?
That makes complete sense.
Right. That guy might actually want to coach another position, right? He might actually want to be the linebackers coach or secondary coach or line coach or whatever it is, in addition to, like other defensive coordinators do all the time.
Yep.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Brett,
So before, because I'm assuming there's going to be, we'll do like probably a podcast, like a breaking news podcast, I'm sure, when they do the DC. I just want to get your guess who the DC is. We're people, before you do this, total disclaimer, we're going to guess who it is. We're going to educate guess. RJ and I are going to say who we feel it is and why. Tell me why you think, or who it is and why you think this person that you're saying is going to be the next defensive coordinator of Oklahoma.
Pete Golding.
Yeah.
Pete Golding. Everything that I've heard is that that's the dude that that Lincoln wants, right? Whatever he's saying or not saying, everything that I have heard, everything that we've reported around is that this is the guy that is at the top of the list. And Lincoln Riley has built up a lot of equity, a lot of really good equity for which he can press, if he wants to, the issue about going to get this guy after the national championship. And whatever the number is the number. And I think that's what you're going to run into is, do you want to pay this guy like one of the top defensive coordinators in the country before he's done anything? Well, yeah, because I made this joke where I showed the screenshot of what Alabama had done, and OU had zeros next to all of these statistics, and going, do you want this to happen again? Do you want to get this far again and have this happen? Because also, you're probably not going to be able to put this together the way you've been able to put it together over the last 3-4 years, because it's not that Austin Kendall's bad. It's not that Jalen Hurts is that good. It's that to ask somebody to do what Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray have done for the last 2 years is asinine. You have to get balance. And if balance costs $1.7 million, then go buy balance. And I think that's the reason for which I think, it's Golding until it's not.
Okay, so I'm with you
on
Golding, but I'm not as strong as you are with on Golding, because just for the pure fact that I believe it's going to be hard to pull him away from Saban, with Saban promising that, hey, look.
No, that's a very good point. It's a very good point.
You're going to be the DC, the guy, and you're going to be making such and such money at Alabama here in the next year or two once Tosh Lupoi takes his next step as a head coach.
Right.
But the problem is that Golding's been calling the play since the Louisville game this year. He's not getting credit for it. There is an issue behind the scenes about all that, and I'm pretty positive Saban has ironed all those issues out. But I think Golding still wants to be on his own. He wants to be the guy, and I don't know that he wants to kind of wait. And because you don't know if Tosh Lupoi is going to get it, because it's starting to come out that Golding is the guy that everybody should be going after, and not Tosh Lupoi. So, and I think that Saban is so close with Lupoi that I don't think he's going to, shove him out of the way. That's just not Saban's MO. I just think that it is Golding, but the issue is going to be the house, obviously, that we've figured out that he must be buying. But I think that this all could be just kind of a ruse to kind of throw people off a little bit. We'll know in 8 or 9 days, I think, where Oklahoma's at. If it hasn't been named by the national title date, it's got to be Golding, right? Am I wrong?
I would think so, and I think we're gonna wait and see, and we're gonna end it there. This is Young and Drumm. That's Brandon Drumm. I am RJ Young. We're trying to do this here thing once a week, and hopefully we'll have a defensive coordinator podcast to drop whenever beforehand. But if not, we will see you guys next week. We appreciate
down to Army All-American game.
Oh yeah, that's right. So we are going to do that at the end of the week, and we're going to probably catch up. Maybe we might try to do daily. I'm not going to make that promise, but we'll definitely recap it. See what Brandon sees, see what I see what we hear. And
I'll be heading on Wednesday for sure.
Okay, cool.
Well, no, actually, what is today? Monday?
Yeah, today is Monday. Recording on Monday.
Yeah, I may head down tomorrow, actually. So tomorrow evening I may head down. So I'll be there from Wednesday to Saturday. Hopefully. I got to get some things figured out today after that, since we just got back. But we will be there. So
we'll be there
live.
That's more reason if you don't subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud, and it's on Google Play right now. Go do that. Rate and review. Leave 5 stars. This is a 5-star podcast, like the recruits that we are. All right, brother.